Hello everyone, welcome to this week's Q&A. I'm back as your host, Mod Acorn, and with me we have Mod Arcane.
Hey.
Mod Elena.
Hiya.
Mod Husky.
Yeah.
Mod Kieran.
Hello.
And behind the scenes we've got our live stream producer, Mod Spear, and on chat we've got Mod Sween and Mod Tide. So if you want to have your questions answered on the stream, please tag at Old School RuneScape or at JagXTide. So before we start, as we normally do these live streams, we've got a few announcements. So the first announcement is about the Gielinor Gazette. If you're not aware, the July Gazette is now available for your reading pleasure. Use the command !Gazette. This includes our roadmap plans for the rest of 2020. We also dive into things like ideation days and a few concepts that came from the team in the past months. Also, learn about some of our new starters. So we've got a team, it's expanding, learn about them. We also have another announcement here, and in light of the recent sentiment around account services and other game integrity issues, we are realigning on our approach to moderation of the game rules. You can read our full post by typing the command in the chat, which is !Game Rules. Second thing is we've just released a poll blog number 72. I'm excited for the next one, 73. No? So poll blog 72 is out now. It focuses primarily on skilling changes alongside the Hallowed Sepulchre and Darkmire. So make sure you have a check on that using the command !Poll. And finally, if you aren't aware, tomorrow is normally a game update because that's Thursday, but we are not having a game update this week, so feel free to continue playing during the normal times and not have to worry about logging out. So no game update this Thursday. That is the announcements. So let's start with the basics. How is everyone? We'll go in alphabetical order, so Mod Arcane, you're first.
Yeah, I'm good. It's been a couple of weeks since I've been on a stream, so I'm glad to be back.
Good. Mod Elena?
Yeah, I'm good as well. Been settling in, and I'm almost done with training now, actually, so that's pretty cool.
Mod Husky and Mod Shiro, I guess, if he's in the picture.
I don't know what the question was, but he's just making a mess. He's eating up a bottle right now, a plastic bottle. What was the question? What have I been up to?
How are you today?
Oh, I'm good.
Alright, Mod Kieran.
I'm great. I'm petrified because you're going to ask me what I've been up to the last week and I can't remember.
Should we just go to you first then and then go in reverse order?
Oh,
so
go
what
on.
have you been doing?
Well,
What have you been doing, Kieran?
It's putting me on the spot. You're mixing up the orders now. I went to the dentist this morning. That was exciting. You know, I've got a dodgy wisdom tooth. I need to get it out, and so I had to get it looked at today. But it's been really difficult because dentists have been shut. So I've suffered with wisdom tooth pain for like way too long now. So I'm getting it extracted on Friday this week. So, you know, exciting because I'm finally getting it out, but I'm also sort of petrified because I don't really want to have an extraction. It sounds horrendous.
I know this is just quick TLDR, nobody needs to know, but when I had my wisdom tooth removed, I woke up in the middle of surgery, so I actually was knocked out, and then I woke up halfway through.
Oh,
So
no.
just a heads up.
I'm not getting knocked out at all. So that sounds horrendous.
Alright, so Mod Husky, besides petting Shiro, what have you been up to this past week?
What else is there to do but pet Shiro? That's all he wants me to do. I know what you know. We were talking about this before stream, and it's kind of blended into one. I started questioning. I was like, did I even do RuneScape at the weekend? Maybe. I guess boring game, not game related at all, but fiance and I have started looking for properties, so that's fun, I suppose. You know.
That's good.
Now that
Adult life.
Lockdown stuff is finally sort of easing up, so it's been nice to kind of get a movement on that. We wanted to get this done months ago, and stop paying someone else money to live. I'd rather pay off a mortgage or something, so boring adult stuff, which is probably why it's all blended into one, I suppose.
Hey, Mod Elena, what about you? What have you been up to this past week?
Not too much, honestly. Like I said, just settling in, kind of just getting used to everything in the new place, but I've also been playing this game called Horizon Zero Dawn, which I've been really enjoying. So that was my weekend, basically.
It is quite good. I enjoy it.
Yeah,
I'm not sure
yeah.
if we're supposed to say that here, but who cares?
Oh.
We said it.
Old School RuneScape's obviously better, but it's a good second.
Mod Arcane, what have you done this past week?
Yeah, so the past couple of weeks I'd been farming Corp on my Iron Man, and I managed to get my Arcane Sigil, and now I've been back to TOB using my fancy new shield to free some spiders, man. Weird flex, I know.
It's okay. Chat doesn't know how many sigils you did get.
The fact that you got more than one sigil before an elixir is annoying, but
Yeah.
fine.
More than 2 sigils before first elixir.
Yeah. Right, so we'll move into the questions for this week's live stream. So, last week, Kieran and Sween hinted at that there was a construction contract style minigame in the works for the next small project. Mod Arcane, can you give us some insights into what that might be?
So it's primarily based off of the design that was posted on Reddit, I think it was a couple of months ago now. And effectively, a company is going to come to Gielinor and effectively wants to help renovate some people's houses. And they want to help, well, obviously, contract you to do that for them. So you run around Gielinor, fixing up people's homes, either new furniture or some things maybe broken, maybe this sink's broken and they want a bit of help with that. And you'll get some XP and a few little points for it as well. So kind of the point of this is to provide a slower and cheaper version of training the skill, while being slightly more engaging as well, since currently the meta for training construction is very click intensive, very boring, and very expensive.
So if you're teleporting around quite a lot to go and fix random people's houses, could you essentially get a contract with NPC contact as an example, rather than having to go back and forth all the time?
Yeah, so you will be going back and forth between these NPCs buildings and the contractors that will assign you these contracts quite often. So the NPC contacts will be able to be used to kind of alleviate the travel issue that might come from that.
And we have a question in the Twitch chat by Space General Brave McEpic. What an intense name. Will you add the builder outfit as part of the construction update?
That is
Maybe
currently
you can
being
talk
looked
about
at
some
as
rewards.
one of the potential rewards, yeah. It does seem very suitable to offer the construction or the builder outfit from that.
And any other rewards that you can hint at? We've got someone in the chat also talking about a construction pet. Someone else was talking about other related items.
So I could spoil one really amazing one. Think of an equipable saw. Yeah, very exciting.
Think of one. I'm just picturing in my head now what an equipable saw might look like.
But
I
how
want
does it
it to
look
be
different
like
from a regular saw?
two-handed.
Yeah, just be one-handed.
You got a battle saw there, you just don't need any weapons. You just start smacking people with your saw, which, be quite gruesome, I
Your
suppose.
best in slot.
Do we get to so can you use it as a weapon as well? Assuming.
You will be able to hit
Really?
things, but it's probably going to have quite poor stats.
Okay.
Can we connect a chain to it and call it a chainsaw?
Yes.
Just kind of swing it around.
It's a new
Futuristic.
anti-vampire weapon. You get your Evander's flail, where you replace the end with a saw. Swing that around and hit the Firewatch in it.
This is why Kira no longer designs new content. Just. Okay. So, the next question here is: when can we expect this to be vlogged?
I'm not sure on the exact date, but it's going to be relatively soon.
Okay, cool. It takes a while to get a design concept onto a blog that has to go through a few iterations, so be patient with us. I know that some people are quite excited for it, but again, it might take some time. So, right. So we kind of hit on the announcements that Poll 72 has just been released. So exclamation mark Poll 72. Mod Kieran, on Poll 72, there is a poll question that was specifically for Ultimate Iron Man to vote on. So any other player will be forced to skip the question. why are we restricting that question to Ultimate Iron Man? And can we see something like this in a future PvP poll where things are related only for PvPers to vote on?
So I think this is the first time we're ever restricting a question to a specific type of player.
Yeah.
Right? So I believe the dev changes to allow this sort of thing to happen have just been made so that we can restrict a given question on a poll to specific players based on whatever criteria, really. In this case, if you're an Ultimate Iron Man. So I'll talk about Ultimate Iron Man first, but I think this question is perfect because it only affects Ultimate Iron Man. It literally has no impact on other players at all. And it's up to Ultimate Iron Man how they want their game mode, so to speak, to be changed if this goes forward. I think that's fine. I think that's fair. PvP, obviously, we've had this discussion. It's come up before. Players have talked about this a lot. PvP questions on the polls often struggle to go through because there's a negative side, right? If PvPers are stronger or there's more PvPers, a lot of people in the wilderness might not want that if they're trying to do other things in the wilderness or such as well. Now, that said, I think there is obviously a problem here, and we want to solve it. This is an absolute valid discussion and potential way to go. We don't know the answers yet. We've done the annual survey fairly recently. We're still looking into the results of that. We're still due to receive a full analysis breakdown of the survey results. That's going to help lead into our discussion on that. But naturally, there's a few things that are a bit more difficult than with the Ultimate Iron Man one. If we are to write a question and make it PvPers only, what do you call a PvPer on the poll question? I think there's multiple ways you could go. Is it like lifetime PvP kills? You've killed so many people in the last few weeks. Like, that's the sort of thing you've got to be thinking about. For how do we draw that line, basically, between people who are PvPers and have the rights to vote and people who aren't PvPers. So that's one to work out. And then there's other things, such as, let's say, a reward from Last Man Standing, like a new powerful weapon. Ultimately, that has an impact on the rest of the game. So there is more impact on regular players than just PvPers. So we've got to be really careful about how we do this. But I really do want to get it right, because it's not fair. It's not fair on the PvP community that things go through and often fail, potentially because other players don't like it, or other players do it in spite, whatever reason. The point is, PvP content isn't getting through a poll. What I want to understand is, do the PvP community want this through? That would be a really good thing for us to know. And actually, right now, we can't really understand that because the poll goes to everyone as well. So, a lot to work out, but we do want to solve it. We are having this conversation. It's just not as easy as it is with Ultimate Iron Man. This is also a fairly safe thing to try this out with, being a completely new concept to restrict a question to a specific set of players. Does that help answer that?
Yeah.
I also think it's interesting because Ultimate Iron Man is potentially, like, out of the other Iron Man game modes, the one that has the most unique sort of set of circumstances. Death's handled differently. They can't use the Seed Vault. And typically whenever designs come up for this thing, we just kind of say whether it should or shouldn't, right? And we don't... I know that sometimes we talk to some members of the community to get an opinion, but sometimes speaking to like a small subsect of the community doesn't represent the whole. And I think, as you said, Kieran, this is a fairly safe way to sort of see, is this something that we could potentially, do, right? And if this goes down well, there's no reason it can't go to PvP as long as we establish those boundaries, So I'm excited to see the potential where this could go to,
I think, as some players noted, it's quite easy to determine whether or not, on our end, who is an Ultimate Iron Man and who isn't. And like as Kieran mentioned, it's very difficult to identify criteria of what makes someone a PvPer. Are you someone that does a lot of LMS games? Are you someone that just sits in the wilderness? It's not necessarily... You could be a PvPer, but not get that many kills, right? So we're not sure...
You could just be a bad PvPer.
Yeah, you could just be... You could.
So, honestly, I think this is a discussion that we will want to have with the PvP community themselves as well, right? And let the PvPers input on what's an identified PK based on like what we can tell and what we can see. So Anyway, a lot further to go, but I am optimistic we can get to a solution where we're all happy with it.
Baby steps. So, we have a few questions from the Twitch chat we'll get to first. So, this one is for you, Modkieran. Sevens, SEV, multiple I's, NZ, is asking, how is the fishing boss coming out?
How is the fishing boss coming out? Coming along? Coming
out.
Coming. How's the fishing boss coming? This question makes no sense. I'm reading it on my screen right now.
They're basically, how is it going?
It's in the design phase right now. One of our new content developers is working on the design right now. Been putting a load of thoughts into it. We've been discussing, like, do we go down the route of having like a giant sea monster, sort of like the Moby Dick style route for a fishing sort of boss, or do we go for like some water elemental sort of creature, enchanted, that kind of thing? There's so many different ways you could go. So it's just exploring this concept, see how can we turn that into content. You know, can you imagine like what a water elemental creature could potentially do to make this content interactive? How are you going to make it and turn it into some, you know, encounter basically? So that's all going really well, actually. I'm really excited by the designs that's being put together so far. So it's going to be a little bit further down the line, I believe, before we get the blog out for that and start talking about it a little bit more detail, because we're going through this construction blog first and such. So yeah, I think it'll be a good few weeks away at least. So
Recently,
expect to hear
on
something soon though.
Recently on Reddit, there's been this big wave of a water cape. I assume it's a meme on the fire cape. But I saw a few people asking in the Twitch chat now, is the water cape coming from the fishing boss?
No, is the short answer. I think the water cape would be super iconic. It wouldn't come from if we were going to add it, it would not come from fishing skill boss. It'd come from something a bit more interesting. I think it looks cool. Frankly, I do actually think like an alternate color version of the fire cape actually looks nice. So anyway, I know it's a bit of a meme, but I do actually think it looks cool.
So what you're saying is you can wave goodbye to that water cape. Okay.
For now.
Alright, so we'll take one more Twitch chat question. And so right here, we'll go with you, Mod Arcane. Can the maximum, this is from Keanu News, can the maximum of possible rewards in Chambers of Xeric get increased? Currently, the maximum is 3 rolls at around 1.2 million points, but recent attempts show that it's actually 3.5 million points.
Yeah, so this has come up a few times in the past couple of weeks with the mega scales getting better and better at what they do, and soon they'll be able to get consistent like 3 million plus point raids. I think Ash responded to a couple of tweets about this and said it might be possible, but there's a lot of code being executed all in one tick to calculate all the stuff, and it might be too much. It'd have to be investigated, but we can definitely consider it.
Yeah, I'd like to see it personally as well. I think watching those streams has been like absolutely phenomenal, seeing them work together with that level of coordination to take on like 100-man CMs. Like, I know some of the strategies are like, you know, a lot of speccing down and stuff, but when it's a case of one person can mess up and get hit like one hit straight away, it's pretty cool to watch.
Cool.
I saw you recently commenting on Twitter about you watching them, so I know that you'd be keen right off the bat. So we have quite a lot of questions to go through, so we'll start at the top. Codes RS is asking, this one's for everyone. What are your long-term goals for the game, or what would you like to see more? Any new areas, raids, or skills? So we can start with you, Arcane.
Raids.
Quick and easy. Modelina, any changes to that?
I mean, I do agree. I would love to see more raids type of challenges. I also really enjoy Inferno just because of how difficult it is, right? So I enjoy kind of difficult challenges, I guess. Same with Sepulchre. It's really cool because it's skill-based, in my opinion. And so I'd like to see that and maybe more skilling bosses in general. I think there's a lot we can do with skills.
Yeah.
Mod Husky?
I thought about this question, and there's three things that I'd kind of love to see in the game. First, I think the things jump to my head is, obviously, I've defaulted this answer to Group Iron Man before. You all want it. I'd love it. It'd be great fun. I echo the sentiments of my colleagues here. Some sort of raid 3 that takes like the good parts of both TOB and Chambers somehow. I don't know. I just think there's so much we could potentially do. And this might be a bit of a curveball, I guess, I suppose is the word I'm looking for. I used to play a lot of like World of Warcraft 3v3, and I'd always imagine what that would look like in Old School RuneScape, where like 3v3 people sign up for a PvP thing, and like one's a ranger, one's melee, one's mage, and just sort of like see how that sort of plays out. That'd be such cool sort of to see that dynamic of like semi-competitive, multiplayer PvP stuff like that. I don't know, like this is all like tech aside, rewards aside, would it work? But that just sounds like so much fun if you like put people into this, That sounds pretty cool.
I do like that idea. I know that Mod Rogue, when she was originally pitching some esports ideas, she said quite like blatant that there is no healer role like within certain things, and she sees that quite often. And she wanted to know like if there was something that we could do where we give people essentially a role to do in a mini game or this type thing, and then they help their team with that role. So. I
guess we make games and we make rules, and we kind of have the healing spells already in the Lunar Spellbook. And I wonder if there's any way like we could have like some sort of system that made that better for this one type of content. That might be quite cool.
No, not Barbarian Assault. It's not like that. Not that healing.
To be fair, the mega skills we were talking about actually utilize a healer role properly in that, because they can take way more damage consistently that they can out heal. So to save the death, they do actually have people using the sort of cure spells to increase that healing output on people in like Justiciar and Dins. It's been pretty cool to see. I think we've got so much potential for that, like in the game, that could be explored.
Yeah. Mod Karen, you've had a couple of minutes to think about it. What do you want to see in the game? You had some time, and you're just like, I don't know.
Oh, it's so hard. These questions are so hard. I talked about it last week on the Q&A, but I'd love to see, like, genuinely, I'd love to see like a roguelike sort of mini game in Old School RuneScape. I think that's something that I would get really excited about. I mean, I echo everything everyone else has said already, to be honest. I'd love to see Raids 3 and do another raiding dungeon. I'd love to see the next quest after Dragon Slayer 2. I love the big quest series as well. I'd love to see the next Zero expansion and start to finish off that continent. It's been a long journey in Old School since Zero first come out. There's a lot of things we could do.
Cool. So this question is for you, Mod Husky, and this person has a very fitting name for their question. The person is Twisted Shark, and they are asking, are there any details you can give us about Leagues 2? As a Dragon Trophy winner last season, I am eager to try again. Also a weird flex in that answer/question.
Well, as a fellow Dragon Trophy owner, no, I'm super excited about Leagues 2. It's been a lot of fun working on it. We've had a few sprints worth of development work in it, and I believe yourself, Acorn, you've been putting together a blog that actually has all the details that we kind of want to have presented first, such as like the rule set, the things that we're continuing forward, the things that we're potentially changing. I don't think it mentions a lot about rewards, because we want to have a separate one for that. I think it's more important to get feedback on what the actual rule set is first, in separation from the rewards. But I am really excited for this one. I think the most... I said last league I couldn't pick which relics I wanted even ahead of time. But I still think I had a general idea and went that route. I'm looking now, and I really can't make that decision, even no matter how much I run it through my head, because one of the big positive changes we heard was that if you wanted like a PVM path last time, you just picked the PVM one on Relic 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, and there wasn't really a choice. now like the whole first tier is like skilling focused, and you'll see that on the job. So you genuinely will pick something to help your skilling, and then the next time you might get one for like PvP for PVM stuff, and the next one you might get utility. So they're all grouped. So you're not going to have these weird builds where you got one person with 5 like PVM relics and another person with 5 skilling relics. Everyone's going to have like, you know, a couple of each, and I think that's really going to make the choice that much harder for the account. And it's so much that. But I'm looking forward to revealing what that rule set is and getting feedback, because there's going to be so much more level of strategy, like a one level deeper, if you will, than we had in the Twisted League, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Casual leak that there's some aspect of PvP involved.
There aren't. Do you know what? If you want a spoiler for something, there will be ways to engage in PvP combat in the league, even if it's not the focus of the league. And it will be fun to see what people do with that.
Can't wait to see Goblin versus Goblin.
It'll be possible, but it's not the focus of the league. So, yeah.
Every time I talk to Mod Flippy and Mod Husky to kind of get like answers for the blog. So one of the feedback points we got last time was we were very, very vague on what a league was, and with this time around, we do know more about what a league is, and players know what a league is a little bit more. So we've decided to kind of take that approach where we're giving you a little bit more information, but we aren't giving you everything. So we'll have a lot more this time.
Can I sum up what I think a league is in general? Because I think leagues, every single league we do, should feel very different, right? Some will be closer and similar to others, but at its core, you have a task system with an arbitrary set of tasks that we are defining. That's the real aim of the league, right? You're trying to complete tasks, get points. Along the way, you get relics, which are game-changing, powerful buffs. Completely change your experience. Make that intentionally a hard choice. But those two main things, tasks and relics, core of the league, come wrapped in a completely sort of game-shattering change to how the game is put together. So, you know, maybe that's a bit exaggerated, game-shattering. But, you know, the first one we restricted you to Zaya. I think, actually, that's a fairly mundane sort of league compared to what our ambitions are, right? That was only our first go at it. This one's completely different. Our third one might be something completely different again. And it spins the whole game on its head and puts it through this consistent lens of tasks and relics. So you know what you're doing, even if it's a completely different game behind it almost. So it's a way that lets us really experiment with the old school experience and offer you something completely different, but it's still old school RuneScape.
And I think the thing that's really interesting is we've seen so many suggestions for potential leagues, and I have not seen a single suggestion that is like close to what we're doing. You know, like no one has guessed it. Like, and that's pretty exciting, I think. You know. So
you're telling us it's not Goblin League?
No, sorry guys. It's whatever Goblin League is in your mind. That's not it. You know, much to Flippy's dismay, I guess. I don't know if he's for it or against it. I think it changes on the day.
So we've talked about leagues, and players have asked us a while for that. So let's kind of talk a little bit about. We've got a few questions here about raids and TOB. So Mod Elena Schoolies is asking, is it possible to add a metamorphosis of the Jad Pet to turn... Oh, this is not even... So they've changed the question. Sorry, this is not TOB related, but PVM related. Is it possible to add a metamorphosis of the Jad Pet to turn it into the Infernal variant, maybe by using an Infernal cape on the Jad Pet?
So it's definitely possible from our side. We can do it. I think I personally love getting pets in the game. I think pets are really cool. And if we were to do that, I would I agree with requiring Inferno completion to actually get that morph. What kind of strays me away from the idea is that there's already a pet from the Inferno, right? So do we really want to give you both, or the chance at a pet and a morph? I'd be curious to see what players think of it.
I would go with. I mean, you would add the Metamorphosis option to the Zuck Pet, surely. Surely that's the more sensible way to do it. That the Zuck Pet can turn into all the other creatures in the Inferno. Potentially with some further unlock, but it doesn't even have to be just Jad, does it? It could be all the other boys, like the Bat, the Blobs. You know, I don't know even what I wrote the names for these things.
This.
I know, but I've just, you just have to adopt with the times. The Bats, Blobs, Magey Boy, Range Boy, and Snake.
Magey Boy.
Blobs are the worst one on that list. Like,
they're so
triggering.
The question is how you do that. I mean, do you just add it and people can suddenly transform Zucks, or do you have a further unlock?
Hard mode Inferno?
When?
I think I could get behind it if there was, like, I don't know, a harder Inferno, like you said, with all the different Riot submorphs. I was thinking back to the actual Jad pets. Maybe if you actually consumed the pet on morphing him, I think that would be more fair. So then you at least can't use that cape to potentially get pets, right?
We have Mod Tide is putting a straw poll in the Twitch chat to see what players' thoughts are.
Here's my solution. Once you've defeated the Inferno, you can re-enter the Inferno to take on the 6 Jad challenge. If you can defeat the 6 Jad challenge, you get the Metamorphosis on your Zuck pet.
You should vote in the poll.
I have kind of wanted to have some way to put 6 Jads in the game. I think that we've put it on test worlds, we had it at RuneFest, but I think it was cool to have as a time limited thing as a novelty before, but now it's just kind of, there are people who've beaten it. It might be cool just to see if they can. It might also be cool to have a leaderboard for that, who can beat them the fastest, And I just know I saw Wooks on the test worlds doing Darok bombing 6 Jads. And
so what you're saying is this content is just for him.
OSRS in the chat is improv game design. This is exactly what this has all been. The player's suggestion to begin with was, use an infernal cape on a Jad pet and turn it into something completely different. But
that's kind of the best part about game design, to be honest, right? For every good idea, there were a dozen other weird, maybe stupid, maybe just weird ideas that amalgamated into it. You know what I mean? Never be scared to be creative and come up with potentially bad ideas, because good ideas can come from them, right?
So inspirational, that should be your quote.
All right, we have in this call 3 J mods who've all beaten the Inferno. Do you reckon you could beat 6 Jads?
Yeah,
I think I could.
Nah, maybe. I've done 4.
I've comfortably done 4. I tried 5 and it was pushing it, but if I got past the first one, I'd be fine. I think it just needs practice. I think like anything, you just sit down and practice it and you'll get it down.
I think Elena's honest and you two are over ambitious.
I'm confident.
I'd rather be over ambitious. You know what I mean? Set new goals for myself and beat those goals.
Let's go to the next question, or we're never going to get through these questions. Donna is asking Mod Arcane, any chance we could see some buff ideas for the Elder Maul in the future, considering it's as rare as a twisted bow, yet the twisted bow is 120 times its price, and it's outmatched on 99% of the monsters in DPS by other inexpensive melee weapons?
Yeah, so this was something that we were considering for Pulse 72, and I did get quite a bit of thought on this, and at the end of the day, there's just nowhere to really put it in terms of buffing it. Do you want it to just be objectively better than Bludgeon? And then in what space does it become better than the Inquisitor's Mace, right? And we don't want it to better the Inquisitor's Mace, so where does it sit? You can't just strictly buff its DPS. There's a bunch of small things you could do, maybe if it hits, it always hits a 5, right? So then you can never hit a 1, 2, or 3, or 4, and that slightly buffs the DPS, but why? I guess it doesn't really do much. It does have its uses. Like you can flinch. Like the best thing to flinch Tecton with is really good for killing the Corp, and it's good at Sarachnis for like last hitting between like rotations. So it has its use. It's not fair to compare it to T-Bow because T-Bow is just insane. I do understand the frustrations. It's such a rare item, doesn't have a lot of use, but I'm not really sure where it could go.
I think if it was going to be the best in-slot crush weapon, it should have been done before Inquisitors came out, because now I don't think it should be better than the Inquisitor's Mace. And the Inquisitor's Mace is phenomenally holding like a pretty great value, and it's very useful. Yep. The other question as well is that like perhaps the Elder Maul is the answer to a question that hasn't been asked yet, right? And I remember I actually got one just before Theatre Blood came out, and I was thinking as a player, this is before I joined the company, like, oh, I wonder if Theatre Blood has a mechanic where you absolutely need to kill something in the least hits possible, right? And in some case like that, like an Elder Maul would be phenomenal, right? There's just no sort of design, I suppose, that they'd be good for, and there's no reason to say we can't come up with one in the future, you know? Where having a slower, harder hitting weapon is just better, perhaps, you know?
Add to that, absolutely agree. You know, so much in this game, it's about DPS, and the fastest weapons generally win that battle. They don't overkill, right? Fundamentally, is the biggest thing they have. So, I think we should design something that does encourage a slower weapon sometimes, because we don't do it often.
Yep.
Cool. So we have a Twitch chat question that is kind of on the topic of like crush weapons. So we know that the Nightmare is weak to crush, and people are asking, so Chopo_RS is asking, can we change the Nightmare scaling to 3-man instead of 5? It is a question that comes up quite a lot. Who wants to take it?
I feel like I've answered this a couple of times now. We're waiting on some data. We have got the data back, and it's kind of just making a decision. I kind of agree with it in both directions. I understand the frustrations of getting 5-man groups, but if you strictly just change it to 3-man scales, then 3-man just becomes insanely better GP per hour, and something kind of has to be done about that. And if we just reduce the drop rates, like to be equivalent, so then say it's like a 20% reduced rate of getting uniques, like is anyone going to do it then? It's just going to feel even worse doing 3-mans. It's just a bit awkward, really. There isn't a clean solution.
If I'm going to be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of Nightmare's current drop rate scaling thing, because it's kind of weird, right? 5-man is optimal, and anything less than that technically is, right? Apart from the fact you use more supplies per kill, the kill times kind of scale roughly about right, you know, to the point of like, obviously you got one person, you're doing a fifth of the DPS of 5 people, roughly. I know the numbers don't quite line up. And it only goes up by like an extra 1% per person above 5. So it's really not worth taking a 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th person. So you end up in this 5-man is the meta. But the difference with 3-man and 4-man and 2-man, etc., is that like it's so much more punishing. You know, if you lose one person, it makes the fight so much harder. And as you said, if we just left the drop rates at a 1 in 120, it would just become the new, you need to do 3-man. You know, you're just moving the number as opposed to providing an option. And I think that's the answer we haven't really got right now. Perhaps it is, as you said, we just modify the drop rates and just say it's as good as 5-man, but then you've got a weird sort of scaling at the lower end that suddenly goes the higher. I wonder if there's something that needs looked at as a whole. Do you know what I mean?
Perhaps we could fix it at both ends and change the scaling system so that people do have reasons to go in 6-man groups, 7-man groups, or even masses. I think that's fine. That's fun. Sometimes it's nice to go and mass a boss. It's great.
One of the things that the data that Arcane kind of pointed out, right, was we always said we wanted this to be the boss that anyone could jump into at any time, right, regardless of their level, and feel like they could get something, right, even if it was a low chance. That was something Corp kind of had, right? You get people in 100 combat, jump in, and it kind of was on release, and then it never really satisfied that goal, I think. You know what I mean? Where right now it's really only done by the top end people, mostly just pet hunters or people going for like that really rare chance at an expensive item because that's the thrill they sort of seek, or like Iron Men obviously going for the items. Perhaps there is like something bigger that needs to be addressed rather than simply scale it to 3-man, you know? I'd be interested to have that discussion with like internally instead of just saying a Band-Aid fix the 3-man. And it could just be we do the 3-man thing and then leave it at that. And we decide that's the best thing as a result of that discussion, but yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So going back to our questions, and this is for you, Modcast. Vitor Boom is asking, what are your thoughts on the state of Corp? Currently, people hop around in hopes to steal someone else's kill, but also Iron Men spec it down and telly to get it killed.
Alright, how do we tackle this? I think, well, also, add to this, please, Arcane Husky, people who've done this on Iron Man and maybe have some experience of what it's like. So, we've had problems with Corp in the past. And we made it a change so that Iron Man had their own cave, which I imagine helped a little bit. But even Iron Men can still get help from other Iron Men, or even worse, have them grief and crash. Sometimes you might not even know that someone's in the room because the room's empty and you naturally just might walk in. So, how do you tackle this? Well, I think for me, is the only obvious one that jumps out is to instance it, and then obviously nobody can grief it, and nobody can potentially help you get the kill by speccing it for you, for example. So, the problem with instances is that currently a lot of people do death piles. So, they will go to Corp, die intentionally to leave a set of food or such on the floor. With an instance, that completely changes the game. You cannot do that. We'd have to make the gravestone outside the instance, and hence, it's a different situation. So, we could just get rid of that, and just say you can't use this death method anymore, where you leave stacks of food on the floor and make them all instances, and avoid the problem. But yeah, it's how we handle it.
Yeah. I see people asking to keep instances open and stuff in the chat. We just can't. There's like an automatic cleanup that happens. The way we would do it if we had an instance, like forced Iron Man to do instance only, is that we would store the amount of defense reduction on the player and reapply that when the instance is opened, so that it would still let you spec it down. Because while that isn't the most desirable method to kill a boss in the game, at this point I think it's a bit too late to change that, considering the number of people who've done it already. And as you said, like Kieran, we don't currently have a good solution to the whole death pile thing, and currently I think it's like 7 to 8 kills an hour to do the death pile method, where you take a lot of mage defense, and it's like 4 to 5 just specking down normally. Those are ballpark. The numbers might be slightly different, but if we made it instance only, we would be reducing the best method to kill Corp by about 60%, maybe. I hope I've done that math roughly right. It's a difficult situation to take, and unless we can come up with an inventive solution to allow food to somehow remain, perhaps. But I also don't know if we can. You know, it might need a bit of playing around with. It would be kind of weird. You'd be putting the food somewhere else and trying to remember where it was and then putting it back and hoping that it comes out right. But it's a very strange system, you know?
I could also say the legit feedback that death piles is a bit of a broken mechanic anyway. That's a bit abusive as a way to kill a boss. So maybe it's worth it, but maybe it's better. Maybe it's still better because you're not going to get grief. You're not going to have all these other problems. And you get away from the idea that people can help each other out with killing it. So it's a trade-off. I've seen the feedback in the chat with people saying, can you keep the instance open for a little bit? We can't. That's sadly just the way instances work. There's only so much space on the map dedicated to instances, and there would be no easy way to manage it. So, yeah, sadly, without a bigger engine change, that's not an approach we can take. So, personally, I'd feel fairly comfortable getting rid of death piles for instances, if that's the solution that we think's worth it. But anyway,
I mean, we don't have to get rid of the normal cave, right? So people who want to do death piles can still do it in the normal cave, and if people are worried about getting ragged, they can do the instance.
I still think that doesn't address the issue of Ironman using other Ironman accounts to spec down Corp for them, or hardcore Ironman using Ironman to spec down Corp for them. To me, I think if we were to go the instance approach, I'd probably say that Ironman have to do it in that instance, to be honest. Like, because I think that's the problem we're trying to solve, if that makes sense, as opposed to just
I don't think
saying,
Ironmen get griefed very often. It's mainly about the boosting issue for Ironmen. It's mains that get griefed.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go to the next question so that way we can get some of these answered. Sun Saint is asking Madalena, can the players expect a Hallowed Sepulchre-esque style update for runecrafting to ever come to Old School in order to elevate one or more of the hated early game grinds? Specifically, they mentioned the range level between 40 and 77.
So I completely see where the person's at with this. I would like to see some changes to runecrafting as well. Or maybe not changes to existing content, but maybe an alternative way to train it, be it a minigame or some sort of activity. And if by Sepulchre you mean the difficulty, I wouldn't like to see that, I think. But if you mean by the way that you have certain levels and you with level requirements and agility to get to the next level where you get more XP, then I could kind of see that being added to like some sort of minigame or activity. I know it's pretty vague what I'm talking about right now, but there's nothing, as far as I know, planned to do with this. But it's something that I've actually been thinking about recently, and I would like to do something with it. But can you expect it soon? No. Is it possible? Definitely.
Well, I see a lot of people talking about like RuneSpan. I don't think the idea here is to just do AFK, click something, and then walk away and gain about 30k runecrafting XP. I don't think that's what Madalena is talking about. Maybe something more on the esque of like Great Old Project style, where you actually have to interact with the minigame rather than AFK.
Yeah, definitely something interactive.
Cool. So, Mod Husky. DRFC is asking, can the grand chest on the Hallowed Sepulchre be unique from the other chests in the floor and display the loot in a small window, similar to how the Barrows chests show your loot?
Could. I suppose it's just one of those things where that sounds like an additional level of polish that I wouldn't be opposed to, but we just never had the idea and definitely didn't have the time to do it, I suppose, before release. I don't see why it couldn't right now, to be honest. It's one of those things where, like, there is time to do that. Like, I don't know whether we can reuse the existing Barrows interface or we'd have to create one for ourselves. But it's definitely not a quick job, and it has very little payoff. Perhaps we can even reuse... I don't know myself, even the systems that TOB use and stuff. But I'm not directly opposed to it. It just comes down to a time versus value proposition, I suppose. And to me, it's quite low on that list.
Looking at the chat, it seems like a lot of them are just kind of like, why? They just rather you spend your dev time elsewhere.
That's kind of my response. Not opposed to it. Don't see a big reason for it either, you know?
Cool. So, Mod Arcane. Forgiveness is asking, can the seed packs from the higher contracts only reward the seeds that were used in the contract? And hops. You get way too many useless seeds that just get dropped or thrown in the vaults. Could these be removed from the table?
So the question kind of implies that it wouldn't be a buff. So you like any roll maybe that you would have got from that, maybe you just don't get anything. At least that's how I'm interpreting it. And that makes me kind of wonder why. Like, you might not want them useless seeds, but other people might want them, and it's not really the end of the world just putting them in the seed vault, right? Like, it doesn't take any space from you or anything. Some people like collecting acorns.
I see what you did there. That is not a useless seed. Okay, we'll move on. The next question is for you, Madalena. Nick is asking, can duplicate pets award a token with the insurance lady that gives a free reclaim of any pet that's been lost?
I kind of like the idea just because when you see a duplicate pet, meaning that you already had a pet and you have a funny feeling like you would have been followed in the chat, that's not a good feeling. If there was something to get out of it, I think that would just make your day a little bit better, you know, put a little
People
I don't know,
are still
healing on the
feel
wind.
bad.
Yeah, but you know, it's a comfort. It's a small comfort. I don't see anything wrong with it. It's not a huge gold sink as it is. I don't think people are killing off a lot of their pets. At least I hope they're not. So I don't see that as being horrible.
Meanwhile, you have people like Mod Rock, who has 4 Rocky pets and isn't even 99 thieving it.
Ridiculous.
Disgusting.
Right. Next question. This is for everyone. So we'll start with Arcane first. And Kieran, think about this before we get to you, please. Cormac is asking, is there a piece of content that you regret or you wouldn't make today? And what would you do differently?
Oh, considering I've only been in the team for like 3.5 months, I haven't really put that much like sizable chunks of content in the game yet. I can't really say I've got anything to regret yet. In terms of contents made it into the game, wouldn't make today. Again, I'm not sure. I don't think this question's applicable to me, to be honest.
I mean, we have people in the chat saying Nightmare Zone. Like, if there was an update, they could just stop. It would be Nightmare Zone.
Yeah, I think this has been brought up quite a lot of times, like people hating on Nightmare Zone. It is kind of a weird piece of content, but if people aren't doing Nightmare Zone, they're just going to go to like Bandits or another AFK method, so I'm not sure if the problem is about people AFKing all the combats to 99 or specifically the Nightmare Zone is just weird, but I think we all kind of acknowledge the weirdness of it.
So, Modelena, you haven't devved anything in the game yet. So, but if you could take something out of the game that's in there now, what would it be?
I see a lot of people saying Rev Caves. That's actually a pretty good one. The issue with that is that it's so easily dominated by clans at the moment that if you want to go there as a single person, you really just can't, right? So maybe not take it out of the game, because I think that it's a cool idea, but maybe just redesign it a bit. You know, find a way that it's harder to control as a clan.
Random thought on Rev Caves. Sorry.
Oh.
Just come in on the Rev Caves discussion. I know there's a big, massive Rev Caves discussion, and this is vaguely related to Rev Caves, but it's a completely random thought. We have single combat, we have multi-combat. What if there was like a in-between, which allowed you to be attacked by an NPC and one player?
I'm not sure. Everyone's question marking.
So that you can get attacked by a player, but not a clan, even while you're fighting a boss in the wilderness or an NPC in the wilderness. Anyway, it was a complete off-the-cuff idea, but it was related to Rev Caves because I thought, what if you made Rev Caves single, but then you could just attack a Rev and be safe? Anyway.
It was just
a brainwave. This is a good way to maybe handle it. Anyway.
I can see the light bulb above your head. Just like,
it was a literal light bulb moment.
Would you do this across the board, though, or just Rev Caves? Like anything in the wilderness?
I mean, I'm not saying everywhere in the wilderness. We could apply it the same way single and multi is, right? You could zone it, give it to certain areas.
It definitely seems to fix that issue, which is we don't want, like... I think the example might be like a wildy boss or something, where you're like, okay, we want people to be able to fight this boss, but we want a player to be able to interrupt them, but is interrupted by tons of people a good thing? You know? I think it's a solution we could consider. Applying to whatever content we think fits it based on, you know, whatever this goes, you know?
Anyway, let's crack on with the main question. That's a good thing. It's a good seed of thought, that one, to keep developing over time and think about how we can use it.
I see a point in the chat.
2 hours with Kieran's brainwaves.
Kind of abusable with boxing alts was something I just saw in chat. So maybe there's things we obviously will need to consider. A light bulb moment like this is never going to have all the, I guess, pros and cons weighed up, you know?
So, but what about you, Husky? What would you remove?
So I have one single piece of content that I've put out there that I regret heavily. and that would be the Siren's Tome. And it didn't make it into the game, and I don't think a Magic Offhand necessarily would have been a bad reward from the Nightmare. But I think that I didn't actually put as much thought as I should have into that reward. And I can't, suppose, take full responsibility. There was a team behind that as well, but I do regret that the way that played out. And I wish that I'd properly considered where the Arcane deserves to be in that hierarchy, instead of ending up in the situation that we were in there. And I'm glad it didn't make it into the game, and it's now a cool little Easter egg in Death's Office. I'm not sure if people saw that. I didn't know about it till it went live.
Whoa,
but,
spoilers!
The model exists on the shelf in Death's Office because it died. And I think that I think it's definitely been a learning curve for me, right? To just put a lot more thought into that reward space than I perhaps gave it at the time. You know, I think it sounds obvious. Of course, you're going to try and think about rewards, and I think I did for things like the cudgel, but I think that one I just didn't. You know, and that's my bad. I make mistakes, and you know, the community called me out on it, and rightly so. So, yeah, it's a learning curve.
And you, Modkin, anything?
So, you know, obviously, all the big mentions of content in game, like Nightmare Zone, Rev Caves, but looking at stuff that I've done specifically, I think, not necessarily with the content itself, Volcanic Mine, right? Not a ton of people have played it, but I think broadly, the Volcanic Mine itself is really quite liked by the people who do it, and then it's enjoyable in terms of mining content. The problem is, for me, its placement in Fossil Island and the requirements around it. I think when it was first talked about, we talked about it having like a kudos requirement. It was launched with a much higher kudos requirement, and I think the content was inherently not accessible by very many people, and it's never really taken off quite well. I dislike the fact that it's kind of attached to a Discord community, in that it sort of has to be, because you need to find groups. It's quite hard. Like, it's not to say the Discord community is bad. I think it has to exist. It's great because you can find other people to do it with. However, I dislike that you have to. I would much prefer that you could get to people with other people in game and such. And obviously, it's got quite a lot of requirements in front of it. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think it's really good content, and a lot of people don't get to do it because of various reasons that make it hard to access. That's potentially changes we could still make. It's not necessarily regret. I don't think we should take Volcanic Mine away or whatever. I think it's underappreciated content because of a lot of different reasons, and that's where the regrets potentially could be.
Cool. So almost out of time, and we still have a few questions, but it's okay, we can always carry them over to next week. So we've got a question here for you, Modkin. I Ate Your House is asking, can TOB spectating be made more consistent? Currently, you can see and communicate with spectators in Maiden, Bloat, and Stowstug, but not in Nilo or Zarthus and Verzik. Specifically, if you are spectating during Verzik, for example, the people in the raid can't see you, and they can't see anything you type.
Without being able to dive in deeper and looking at the code and how this was set up, I can't really comment. But I agree with the sentiment of the question. I think it absolutely makes sense. So it is looking at to do it, but I don't see a reason why we wouldn't. I know there's some potential. You need to make sure those people cannot be attacked and interact with the content. You need to make people and be able to see it with the camera angles and such. There's a few considerations, and I know it wasn't straightforward for Ash to set up when he did write the code for that. So I don't know it off the top of my head, basically.
We have another TOB question, but this one's for Mod Elena and Mod Husky. Yay Dopamine is asking, would you consider an option to break down TOB Uniques for Scythe/Sang charges, or perhaps trade the Uniques in general at half of their GE value for charges themselves? This provides a long-term option for endgame Iron Men to keep their Scythe/Sang charged, as currently the primary meta is purchasing protection to generate enough blood runes.
Should I go first? I'll go first.
Go first.
Sure.
I agree with the fact that this is an issue that needs solving, right? Iron Men desperately need more blood runes. I don't really agree with the way of doing it through TOB like this. I don't see it making sense to break down a rapier and magically get blood runes. I'd rather have this sorted through runecrafting, which is a skill made for that exact purpose, you know? So if we could do something, like I mentioned before, some sort of minigame or, you know, activity to get more runes that way, that would be good.
So,
Husky.
so hot take on this, I suppose. I'm disagreeing with you. I agree with that it shouldn't come from TOB, but I disagree with the fact that this problem potentially needs solved. I don't know if it needs solved, is the honest truth, right? These are very powerful weapons that are having a cost to use them, and part of that can be sort of resource management and deciding what you do and don't use them for. I think the issue comes from the fact that the meta to get them is generally buying them from shops, and right now that feels very contested with others. And I worry that if we make that easier / better, then there's no way to have content that balances that, right? So if we did address it, I would rather it came from, agreeing with you there about like some form of either runecraft content or something else. I don't know. I think making shops better is a last resort if we do want to fix it. I'm not entirely convinced we do need to, but I see both sides, right? I don't know whether the right it is we should fix it or not, but to me, buying runes from shops it's going to the Grand Exchange with extra steps, right? And to me, that's not why I played the Iron Man game mode. You know, to be able to just buy and convert coins into resources.
Cool.
That's my opinion on it. It doesn't represent the entire team here, right?
No.
There are many J mods, and there are many other Iron Man J mods with other opinions, you know. But that's
And we
my
have
opinion
people
on it.
that they're like, who asked these questions? Well, you know what you do, you guys. You ask these questions. This is why we're asking them. I'm not putting this on, like, we're not putting these on the doc and then asking them because we want to talk about these topics. You guys are asking these questions. So we have one last question, and it's for everyone. We will start with Mod Arcane first. Bubbles67. So Bubbles67 is the person you can ask why they asked this question. How do you feel about Boaty's hardcore Iron Man death?
I watched that live, and it was a mixture of just like it hits you hard, right? Because you can feel the pain about dying in such a way. But oh my god, I couldn't stop laughing. Oh.
Madalena?
I didn't watch it live. Someone told me in Discord chat, and I didn't believe it at first. There's no way he would die that way, right? Yeah, I saw the clip. It was tragic. I'm sorry. I feel so bad.
That was the most unfortunate slapping of a table ever. F. That's all I can really say. It was a great account, had great progress, and I kind of, I guess, regret that that kills your motivation to make an account when it's a mistake like that, right? If you die to a misclick, you know, yourself, like during PVM content, you'd be like, right, okay, I need to play better. Even if your net goes out, or even if like servers go out, at least you can say like that was completely out of your control. But this was somewhere weirdly in between, right? Where it was you weren't in control of your account, but at the same time you kind of were. And I don't think he'll ever disagree that perhaps he should have logged off. But it hurts so much to watch. Just big F.
Are you saying he needs to AFK better?
Absolutely hilarious, to be honest. And anyway, yeah, I think it'd be much worse to die to a DC. That's so much more gutting.
If you had
you
your choice,
can blame yourself.
Right?
But if you had the choice between dying to a DC or dying to you clicking something and going AFK and becoming dead, what would you choose?
But that's my fault then. It's my fault. And rather than, the internet went down in my house or the Jagex servers. So, lots of people have lost hardcores that way. And obviously I think that's worse because it's sort of out of your control.
There's so much RNG in what happened to Boaty, though. Like, I can't help but imagine, like, what if he'd just done one more round of BGS specs? Right? He came back within, like, seconds of the death. And if he got one more round of specs in, would Corp's accuracy have been low enough that he would have still been alive? What if Corp had been on the other end of the cave and just never aggroed?
What if he didn't wash his hands and just went straight in, He might have had saved himself 20 seconds.
Just drunk less water.
Right. So that is the end of the live stream. We have some more questions, but we will save them for next week. Before we wrap up, we have some announcements. The Gielinor Gazette is live. This is the July monthly blog. It lays out our roadmap for the rest of 2020. It also talks a little bit more about ideation days, what they are, and some of the concepts that the team's come up with in the past couple of months. We also have a segment on introducing you guys to our new starters. So if you want to check out more, use the !Gazette. We also have a statement. In light of the recent sentiment around account services and other game integrity issues, we are realigning on our approach to moderation of the game rules. You can read our full post by typing the command !game rules in the chat. The next announcement is Poll Blog 72. It is out now. So if you want to see more about our skilling changes alongside the Hallowed, Sepulchre, and Darkmire improvements, use the command !poll. Lastly, there is no game update next week. So, actually this week, sorry. Scratch that. There's no game update this week. So, don't worry about an update on Thursday. It's not happening, but stay tuned next week for an update. And that's everything. So, cool. We will see you guys next week. Thanks for watching.